Okay, good morning. Welcome to
MinuteMath95.
MinuteMath95. This is a cool problem. You and I have never actually talked about this before, so it'll be fun to talk about anyway. Let's see if you can figure it out with a little help. Tess runs counterclockwise around a rectangular block, JKLM. So she lives at corner J. So she lives here and runs counterclockwise around the block. Okay?
Yep.
Which graph could represent her straight line distance from her home?
What is straight line distance?
So if she's here, the straight line distance is here. If she's here, the straight line distance is here, like that. It's how far away she is from her house. Okay? So these graphs, and this is what we've never talked about before, show time going this way. So this is like time 1, time 2, time 3, times 4. And this is distance going up this way, so this means she just gets farther and farther and farther away from her house. Does that make sense? Do you understand what that means? She gets farther and farther and farther away from her house. Now,
but this one couldn't be possible.
Why not?
Because she's getting farther and farther away, and then when she goes by corner M, she gets closer and closer and closer.
Okay, very good. So we can eliminate A, right?
Yep.
Okay, now B is an interesting one.
The block graph.
Do you see anything, even though we've never talked about these kinds of graphs before, this is time going on, so this is time 1, time 2, time 3, time 4. This is distance. Do you see anything wrong with graph B? Why can B not be right?
Well, because there's like the same straight line distances for some time.
Okay.
And it's like going up really far.
Right, so on this graph, this would be, so first of all, it doesn't say she starts at her house, but it looks like that's probably the case. In graph B, she starts some distance away from her house, right? So maybe she started over here. And she doesn't move at all. She stays the same distance away, and then all of a sudden, magically,
she teleports.
She like teleports over here or something like that. Okay, so this graph doesn't really make any sense.
The blood graph. Nope.
Okay. What about this graph here? So time's going this way, distance is going up this way.
So she keeps getting farther and farther away from her house.
Right, the distance gets farther and larger, then what happens?
And then when she gets to that halfway point, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter, but it shouldn't get larger again.
Yeah, where do you think she is when she's farthest away from her house?
I think at corner L.
Corner L, yeah. So it looks like our graph should get farther and farther away, but then start coming around and get closer and closer. And it doesn't look like we should ever get farther and farther, closer and closer, farther and farther, closer and closer.
This one actually looks right.
Okay, well let's talk about this one. So this one, as time goes on, she gets farther away, and then she gets farther away sort of somehow differently. But there is a corner here that she goes around, so maybe that's what that's talking about. And then she gets closer and closer and closer, and then closer and closer somehow a little differently.
Yeah, that seems good.
That actually might make sense. Okay, so we've eliminated A, B, and C. D we're not sure about. D might actually be right.
Let's talk about E.
Let's talk about E.
Well, E is the same kind of teleporting graph, like B. She gets farther and farther away, then she doesn't move, then she teleports.
Yeah, and then what happens at the end?
And then she just stays up here. She doesn't go back.
Yeah, so that doesn't seem right. So the only one that seems to make sense is D.
And all the other ones don't work.
Yeah, all the other ones don't make sense at all, because either she ends up far away, like in A and E.
Yeah.
Or in B, she teleports. That doesn't really seem to make sense. And in D, or in C, I mean, she goes farther away, closer, farther, closer, and that doesn't look like that can really happen.
No.
So this one, where she gets farther away, closer, closer, does seem to actually be right. Make sense?
Yep.
All right, good job. We've never talked about that before. I'm glad that went pretty well. All right, good job, sweetie.